Wait, stop, hold everything. Alright, let's get started. Mark. Today I'm going to be combining episodes 2 and 3 into one video, as it'll be a little bit easier for me to explain how I made Trousered Apes Media's 2020 demo reel. So let's get started. Alright, so first we're going to take a look at the motion tracking sequence here. So this is the entirety of the sequence. So basically, what am I trying to do? Ultimately, I'm trying to tell an interesting story with these shots, and that's a little bit harder than you would think. I mean, it's just a bunch of cool shots, but how do you take them and combine them into an interesting story that you can tell within 60 seconds to show to a potential client? So that's my goal here for Trousered Apes. I have to combine all these different shots so they can show potential clients, hey, you know, these are the different elements and these are the different special effects that we can do as a company. So being able to have all these combined in 60 seconds and make it entertaining for somebody to look at, that's a big part. That's a huge piece of the puzzle. All right, so let's start simply here. I'm just going to go ahead and turn off all the audio and all the video. We're going to turn on just these shots. All right. So here we are. We have our opening shot here. Now, again, this is the VFX reel. So this is going to be anything from, this is motion tracking, rotoscoping. You can see here that they have the word clinic behind those bars. They're able to rotoscope those in there. Then, of course, we have the really cool clock tower. You can see how it moves. That was quite a tricky process. I will be doing a video on how they do some of these special effects. It's quite interesting. 5 of the main shots in here are from a short film that we both collaborated on. So let's see, we have the clock tower that moves. We have him pulling the balloon sword out of the pole. We have the car that he blows back up. And then we have this Iron Man HUD. That was pretty fun. And then we have him reinflating his body with a bike pump. So that takes a lot of rotoscoping, a lot of masking, a lot of layers, and a lot of prep work. And this shot is for one of their clients that needed a commercial to help sell their business. Once I got all these shots, basically, when you're editing a reel, at least for me, it helps a lot if you have a really good score that you can edit these to. Something that asks a lot of questions back and forth and something that's got a lot of emotion and some drive to it. So let's just go ahead and take a look at the score here real quick. So we have these opening pieces. So right here in the first 10 seconds, we have this quick little whoosh that helps to bring the shot in. Now, that little whoosh goes with this effect. So already, that first shot, that first second, we're already drawing you in because you have something interesting going on. Then you have a whole bunch of floating text. So theoretically, we already have your attention. Now after that, we've got atmosphere that plays after that. And I have it so that it morphs into the actual song here. So I'll go ahead and open those up. All right, so right from the beginning, we have something interesting going on, and the sound and the score help to drive the emotion. It helps to draw you in to what you're actually seeing. Now, for this shot right here, I actually added a special layer. And the idea is to just add some extra atmosphere for that specific shot. So that's just a normal city sound. You got cars driving by, you got some wind, different things happening. So it just helps to really ground that whole shot. Because again, all these shots, they have no sound to them. So it's literally just the shot. So I have to go in and I have to try to make sure that everything looks right with the shot, with color correction and stabilization and all that good stuff. And then I have to go in and make sure that it sounds right and it sounds good. Then, of course, you combine all these different layers together to come up with this. Now, the secret to telling a good story and having good special effects is when you don't notice the special effect. A lot of people think that a good special effect is when you really notice it and it's right there in front of your face. But I don't think that's the case. I think that if it's subtle and it helps to draw you in naturally to the scene and tells the story convincingly, I think that's a much better special effect. Now, this part of the song where it has kind of like a tingly type of a feel to it, I think that's a good place to make some kind of a cool transition into a different shot or a different element that kind of drives up some different emotions. So going from all these different shots to something that's interesting to look at, and it's very simplistic. I think that worked really nicely for this demo reel. And the transition that I applied to it, I think it really helps to draw you in as far as telling that story and keeping the interest of the viewer. So that's a quick rundown of Trousered Apes Media's visual effects reel. Let's move on to their CGI reel. Now this one's a little bit more complicated. Now again, audio is a huge thing here. And this one I really relied on the score to carry the actual visuals of the shot. And the reason why I did that is because there's so many different CGI shots that don't really mix and match. And don't really go together. So having a strong score that you can bounce around from and use to tell the story with all these different random shots really brings all these elements together. To start, let's just take a look at the audio and the raw footage. Okay, so within the first 10 seconds, it's already interesting. There's a lot going on, and the shot that we start with is eye-catching. So one thing I needed to do with this particular one was let people know that this was a CGI reel. So I added this cool little text animation here. Now the idea of that is when you first start up, there's interesting music, an interesting video, and then we throw a title on there. It really helps to just blend all those together and let you know, hey, this is what's happening and this is the story that you can expect to see. So we can turn on these other elements here. I chose to have the text animation fade out, has the sun flare comes into view here. And it's a nice timing, I think, because then you get a nice little piano piece that follows right after that. So it's telling you, okay, that part of this part of the story's over, the beginning's over, now we're moving into the next part, the next phase. And so from there, it just starts to build up. We're starting to go up the stairs of the storytelling process, and we're really starting to build that tempo. As we progress, the shots are becoming more rapid. So we go from 2 long shot sequences to shorter, and they just keep getting shorter and shorter due to the beats. That was one of the reasons why I chose this particular score, because I knew it would be fast. So this score definitely helps to take this whole piece and push it forward. It allows me to cut to the beat and allows it to go really fast in some areas and allows some of those other shots that are cool and that have to have that length to be shown without losing interest for the viewer. All right, and let's move on to the Lexar reel real quick. So this one's about 3 minutes long, and this one was a little bit more complicated. I actually had to go in and create the actual score here. Now, as far as telling the actual story here, I already had a fairly decent idea from working with these projects in the past. It was just a matter of finding out which score was going to really help to drive the emotion and to tell the story that Trouser Daves Media needed me to help them tell. So let's go ahead and take a look at the audio here real quick. Now this one I felt it needed to be a little bit slower in the intro because we have a lot of good material to work with here. So I want to be able to really draw in the viewer through not only the interesting shots that we have to work with here, but through the sound. So you can hear in the beginning, I got a cool little riser. I have a couple swooshes. And then let's see, right here I got a couple atmospheres. So there's one atmosphere, and then we have another one here. And then a third atmosphere. Now we also have some nature bird noises to help blend all those different shots together. Because it is outside after all, so having some birdies kind of chirping in the background with a little bit of wind through the trees, it really helps make that shot. So a lot of these different elements in the beginning aren't actually part of this original score. Those are all different pieces of my sound effects library. Now the reason for me to start off slow with this is because I really want the viewer to focus on what's happening on screen. So instead of having a bunch of loud, crazy music right away, I want people to be slowly drawn into it, not only because it sounds interesting and it sounds right and natural, but that there's also something interesting and abnormal happening at the same time with the pictures. So I mean, going from an actual picture and then, taking it and putting it on something that's not actually real, or taking that tree and completely removing it and being able to replace all these different pieces of the house and the reflection in that window. I mean, that's pretty big. I mean, that's huge. I'm not even sure how he did it, but that's the reason why I chose to go slower in the beginning, because these honestly are probably the most important pieces to start. And then, of course, we lead into all the other CGI animation pieces that they made for Lexar. And again, text is going to be a huge role player here because it helps to explain to the viewer what we're actually looking at. So photography manipulation, that's kind of just a weird thing. Most people don't even know what that is. So people see the text, they watch this quick little piece that slowly builds the momentum of the final story, and they're like, oh, okay, and then they get interested into it. And another thing that helps to really carry these shots is the transitions. So just cutting from piece to piece to piece, it doesn't work as well as you would think. So if we just go ahead and toggle all those off. So let's just watch it without those transitions real quick. So, yeah, it could totally work. But as far as actually going in and telling that story, it doesn't work. There's not enough action going on because, again, we already have a really still and quiet opening. So being able to add in some extra movement is going to be really helpful when people watch this. And it helps to make it feel like it's not so long as well. Because you're going from a very still shot with slow rising music to, oh wow, cool transition all of a sudden. Well, what was that? You know what I mean? So it just kind of helps to build the momentum and keep the interest of the viewer. And again, I really want people to just experience what they're watching. So I was really liking those bird noises and the outdoors noise. As far as like a background ambient, it's kind of like it's like an atmosphere. So I have this little piece right here that I edited in to this song where we can actually take a moment and just listen to the atmosphere and listen to the birds. And I think it's great because it gives you a moment to actually sit back and look at the animation as a whole after we're done watching it come together. And then we're ready to move on to the next one. Now, I did choose not to use a whole bunch of transitions because I feel like too much crazy movement just wasn't going to work with this. So as long as the shots were similar, so we go from a house to a yard with a football to more house shots, I just feel like that totally works for just quick cuts. And then moving into the next shots, the next scenes, where we can actually use some different transitions. Alright, so there's a quick overview of all of those different pieces, so let's jump into their demo reel. So once I finished editing all those different reels together, I basically dragged them into this sequence, so I had all the assets I could work with. And from there, I just picked the pieces that I wanted to go with my customized score. So let's watch the intro real quick. Oh, wait. Alright, so let's talk about this. I needed a cool thumbnail basically for YouTube uploads and Facebook and all that good stuff. So I went in, I created this really cool custom one. So let's see, I can show you what I did. So this is 3 different layers of the title, and each layer's got a little bit of a different element going on. So I got a blur layer on one to make it more interesting, and I changed the colors a little bit. And then I have another blur, but it's just a slight one, because you can see it right here. Then it's the natural colors. And then of course, the main one. This bottom one is just a dark layer, and it helps to give it a little bit of separation against everything else. See it? Alright, so we'll turn all those off. And the black, oh yes, the black video right here, that's a special mask. So I had to go in and create this special layer mask so that there was a little bit more separation for the text. And it just helps to blend it in overall. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and turn all these off. All right, now let's watch it. All right, so within the first 30 seconds, I think that we have them. I think it's interesting. We have some very dynamic shots that happen here. And let's just take a look at the way I opened this whole shot here. So I have it so that it's black. So basically there's nothing there. And we have a very interesting, almost mysterious kind of sound intro. And then it starts to pick up. And as it picks up, we start to fade into something more interesting. So that's a very interesting shot. And it adds a lot of interest to the overall story that we're about to tell. And one more thing I did to add some interest in the beginning, because obviously there's not a lot happening right here. I added this horn effect. And I think that works great because within the first, 15 seconds, we have something very interesting happening, and then we have a nice riser. And that riser leads really nicely into this main part of the song. And then, of course, all these other pieces start to pick up. So the whole idea is we start off small, we start off simple, and we slowly draw in the viewer through interesting shots that we're able to tell visually and with audio. So this whole demo reel is extremely, extremely delicate in the way that we put it together. Because the visuals have to be in a specific place in accordance with the audio in order for this to work. Alright, so basically that's our quick little intro for this one here. Now notice again, I'm not using a whole bunch of transitions in the beginning because it's already the same shots. It's already powerful. It's already got a lot of action happening. Now where I do use the transitions is when we start to go into just the picture renders. And I'll talk about that in a second. So here we go. So we go from a powerful shot of the Earth. And I mean, at this point, it just seamlessly just transitions into that. Now, these pictures, I actually had to animate these because without it, I mean, it's just a shot. Now, with these pictures, I actually had to animate the motion. So this is what it just looks like. So, I mean, yeah, that's interesting. But for a video, we gotta have some kind of action happening. So having that transition really helps to bring it to life, and then it also helps the motion seem a little bit more natural as well. Now, one thing I did with this custom score is I gave it a moment of silence. So we go from a quiet beginning to a quick build up to the intense rise, and then it just kind of falls. And it's kind of silent for a second. And then I was able to edit these different pieces of that song together so that we again have another interesting rise to another, climactic moment. So let's just watch that for a second. Now, notice we go from a very intense, you know, almost claustrophobic kind of a shot where we have a lot going on, and it's the climax of that first phase of this reel. And then we have a very crazy transition that goes into a very soft, smooth shot, which, you know, matches with that particular part of the song. So it's nice because then it gives me a chance to actually show a couple pieces that don't really necessarily need crazy action for this. So because they take a little bit longer to show, so it's nicer to have that moment of breath that we can be like, okay, just take a look at this, isn't this cool? And then of course we're able to start building that momentum again, building up the suspense in the story. Now, notice the score here. What do we got going on? Okay, so we got different pieces that I decided to bring in. So let's take a look at this layer. It's almost got like that Batman feel to it, you know? So we got the strings and we got the little clicky-clacky going on. So that just kind of helps to add to the suspense. So if we actually just turn that off, you can actually see the huge difference that it makes without it there. Yeah, so that just that just doesn't work for me. There's no suspense. I mean, that's dead. Yeah, so we'll just turn that back on. Yeah, so much better. I mean, already, we're taking that small piece, that little moment of breath, and we're starting to slowly build back that momentum. Now down here, I actually have a whole bunch of voice. So listen to that real quick. And it's cool, but I don't really like it throughout the entire sequence. I mean, it started from over here, and it, you know, of course, goes all the way over there. So I kind of split it up into pieces where I actually wanted it and where I needed it. So I chose to have this one here, because watch this. I think that's a really nice element to have right there, because it kind of is a nice transition from the clock tower to this guy blowing himself back up with air, and then we transition again into the homes. So combining all those different shots with these sounds, I think it makes the difference. So let's just watch it without that. I can already tell you right now, it makes a huge difference. It doesn't look right. It doesn't sound right. So we'll just go ahead and turn that back on. And here it is with it on. It just helps to really carry this forward. It doesn't make it feel quite as long. There's always something happening, whether it's visual or whether it's with the sound. You know, going back over this, one thing that I could have done to maybe make this a little bit more dynamic is if we added some movement. So basically what that would be is, you know, say for instance, I click this house and we'll just come over here to scale and we'll click on the keyframe here and we'll just kind of zoom in a little bit. Okay. And we'll just ease out of that keyframe and we'll ease back into this one. And we'll just put those end to end. You know, see that would definitely add a little bit more interest to it, because keeping movement is going to be important overall. Honestly, I think it looks nice, but the other way totally works as well. Personal preference, I would probably have a little bit of that movement, but I think for what they needed and what they were going for, just having that still shot so that way that when they show this demo reel to somebody, they can actually focus on the effect instead of, you know, having that extra movement in there. So for them, I just left it still. Now, another big thing is the transitions. They really help to push the story forward on this one instead of leaving it stagnant. So, for instance, all right, so then let's go ahead and just turn off those layers and let's just watch it without. Yeah, I mean, already those two different transitions that we took out, it makes a huge difference as far as giving direction to the shots and actually leading with the story. It just makes it much more interesting to look at and helps to propel the overall story. Now, one thing I did with these two car shots is I kind of wanted to have them together, but I wasn't sure how I was going to do it. So I left them for the end of the edit. Which I think it worked out great, because having those harder hitting symbols, I think it works great for the glass here. Because if you watch it, it's not really a glass element, but I think it works for this. I did try putting in a glass element, but it was going to be one of two ways. Either I was going to have to put it in and turn down the music so you could hear it, or just really bump up the glass element, which it wasn't working. It didn't sound good. So I just left it the way it was. Now the transition I put on here, having a little rock and then a spin, and then it finishes off with a rock, I think that's a perfect transition for this. If you go over here, we'll turn those off. Ugh. Yeah, no. Now, let me be clear. Having a simple shot-to-shot edit that definitely has its place and that definitely works, but it's very specific. Same thing with these different transitions. So you'll notice, I mean, I don't have a cut in every different place, and I don't have a transition in every different place. I'm mixing everything up. And again, like I said previously, for these demo reels, if the shots are basically from the same project or the same theme, I typically don't add a transition unless it really needs it, like if it's a picture where there's not a lot going on. Now, when it's transitioning from theme to theme or, you know, different project to project, then yes, then that's when you add in those different transitions to help carry it over. It just makes it much more interesting to look at. It's telling you, hey, we're actually moving on. We're going into a completely different theme here. And I don't know, it's kind of fun to play with these different transitions because it's not like it's a fade or anything like that. There's actual movement happening. You know, you got the zooms, you got slides, there's all different kinds of fades that you get to play with here. And depending on the ones you choose, it really can add to the story that you're trying to tell, or it can completely take away from it. So for instance, this shot, it goes from an orb to these cool texts here. And notice the camera starts to spin to the left and then back up. So I chose to push that orb in the same direction that the camera for this next shot would eventually move. And I think it works great. It completely blends it together. Now for this one, for the next shot, so it goes from the cool text to here, the camera, both of these shots have a camera that pulls away from it. So having a transition that zooms away, just like those cameras, it's another great way to really blend all those pieces together. Because I mean, you totally could just leave it as a cut, and yeah, it would. I guess it would work, but why? Why do that? Same thing as if you add like a spin or anything else like that. It doesn't work. You know, it doesn't fit. It doesn't feel right. It doesn't look natural. So that's the whole thing, is trying to make it all look natural when you're editing these pieces together and trying to tell that story. And boom, that looks great. We seamlessly transitioned into the next shot. And then of course our cool little rock and twist on this one. Yeah, it's beautiful. All right, so that's basically all the little pieces for this demo reel for them. Again, we have the custom score that I built for this actual piece, and then editing all these different pieces together accordingly, starting with these opening shots that can take a little bit longer because the soundtrack is a little bit slower in the beginning. And then, of course, we pick it up. And then, of course, we have that smaller piece in the middle where we can take a breath. And I show those smaller pieces that we can take a little bit longer on showing. And, of course, the action just continues to build after that. It's a very tricky and complex process of figuring out how you're going to tell a story with all these different pieces, with sound effects and different visual effects and score to make the final reel. Now, let's talk about the one last piece here. I wanted to be able to end the video with something that was interesting for people to look at, and that clearly stated, okay, this is their demo reel, this is their thing. So I have it so that these texts actually animate from a fade into the shot. And with these masks, it actually makes it look like there's a lot more texture than there actually is. So it looks like the light from the sun might be hitting it from the back and kind of illuminating it in different areas. Same thing for this text down here. I have that same type of a mask going on. And the whole idea is to go from something that looks like this, where yeah, it could work, but it's not interesting. It doesn't really fit with the story that we just told. So adding in that extra layer of depth to help finish off the actual story, it really fits with the overall theme that we just watched. Now these bottom pieces right here, that was just a little touch that I was like, you know what? It needs a little something else. It needs a little, like a little spice on it. So what is that? It's actually a combination of 3 different layers of the same thing with different effects on it. So let's go ahead and take a look at this first layer. Yeah. A whole bunch of stuff. Bunch of fun stuff over here. So we'll just forget about all this stuff up here for now. That's all like color and other different things that I applied to it to get different looks and effects on it. So the one thing that we are going to be focusing on is the blur. Yeah. So basically it was that. So it's a very simple hand-drawn animation. So I took a very simple animation and I was able to create some very interesting effects with it by applying different colors to it and adding directional blur. Now, my idea was to make it look like it was some kind of like a sci-fi flare. So we actually have several different pieces here. This is just the white piece to make it look like it's, bright and it's hot. Then we have that really slight little bit of color. And I actually have 2 different blurs going on here. I got the Gaussian blur. See how it goes from sharp, and then we turn on that Gaussian blur, and it just kind of makes it fill out that body just a little bit more. And then, of course, our bottom layer. So all those pieces together, it makes it look like, there's some kind of a cool flare that came in to reveal the final piece. And I think that works great. I mean, it's just another piece of, wow, even at the very end, the logo looks great. All right, and that's the video for today. Again, the thing to remember is, how do we tell the story? What are we working with? What are the different pieces and elements that we can use to best tell the story? So it's just a matter of looking at it and using your creative style and your creative taste to tell that story. And again, it's all about the story. Everything that you do to it, all the sound, color, the visual shots, the way you edit, it's all telling a story. So the most important thing is to answer the right questions and to tell the right story. For our next video, I'm going to be doing a full breakdown video of the short film 1000 Ships. I'll show you what I had to struggle with as an editor and as a producer to make this short film happen. So I'll see you guys next time.